was a student leader in the Daystar University Students Association of the Valley Road campus. I got an opportunity to take a master's degree from the University of Nairobi, specifically the Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies. So why am I here? Why do I think I'm suitable for this? I am suitable, Madam Chair, for this position and the Honorable Panel for a number of reasons. One, I have had the unique advantage of growing with the institution. Right from when it was established in 2010, I have grown gone through the ranks from the lowest level. I have come to a managerial level. I have interacted with policy at the level of executing. As a constituency elections coordinator, I'm at the lowest part of the food chain. You execute the policies that I've made. I therefore have the advantage of the institutional memory. I have the advantage of having gained experience in elections management through hands-on practice. And this is the advantage I would want to bring. This is the qualification I would want to bring to the policy-making organ of the Commission. Number two, Madam Chair, I have a blend of communication and diplomacy. In my opinion, one of the things that lacks in my institution is communication. After 2010, we had a very good rating and the public confidence was up there for us. But when we started being bashed, as an institution, we reclined, we stopped telling our story. And Madam Chair and the Honorable Panel, I think I will bring the communication aspect and a blend of diplomacy to the table. And most importantly, Madam Chair, the diplomacy. It will help me to engage our stakeholders. It will help me to engage other players. Elections management cannot be left to the electoral management body alone. We need the support of other stakeholders. This is what, Madam Chair, I hope to bring to the table. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Paloshe. Allow me to ask you if you are a registered voter.
Yes, ma'am. I am registered, Limuru constituency, Limuru Model Primary School.
Thank you so much. I'll now request Mr. Morris Kimuli to ask you a few questions.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Would you like me to call you Naisiae or Paloshe?
I probably would allow you to call me Nice, short for Naisiae, but if you can...
Nice.
Nice, yes.
But if you're sure I won't get into trouble for this?
No, you won't. No, you won't. I promise you won't, sir.
Okay. Okay, nice. You say you joined the commission when?
In 2010, January.
2010?
Yes, sir.
You know that this country has had a history of disputed elections. Since you joined this commission in 2010, is there a general election, presidential election, that the commission has conducted that was not disputed?
No, they've both been disputed. 2013 and 2017, both been disputed.
Including the repeat?
Sorry?
Including the repeat election in 2017?
Yes, sir.
And in which a number of people boycotted.
True.
Do you think then that there is something the commission has not done right? I know we had one election that was not disputed in 2002 where President Mwai Kibaki was elected for the very first time. Do you think there are lessons from 2002 that the commission you have served since the new constitution hasn't learned?
Thank you, Mr. Kimuli. Allow me to give you my 2 cents on this. We have had disputed elections of 2013, and like you rightfully put it, presidential. 2013 was disputed. 2017 was disputed. 2002 was very peaceful, and there was no dispute per se in as far as the presidential election is concerned. My view of it, in 2002, the political players came together, ganged up together, if you may allow the use of the word, got together, and they had a common enemy. And the common enemy in this particular election, forgive me for the use of the word enemy, the common objective here was to get KANU, that had been in leadership over the years, out of power. And therefore, the political players, irrespective of their political affiliations, came together and decided we've got to get this out. Now, one thing for me that stands out, when the political players come together and they have one specific goal, Because the political players that came together got what they wanted, then it was not disputed. What happens, sir, my view of it, is that whenever in this country, politicians don't lose elections. It's always, unfortunately, the EMB that is to blame. We are yet to embrace the art of winning gracefully and being humble in our winning and being graceful in our loss. The political players. Because in 2013, what happened is this was the first expanded election. And as an insider, I comfortably would say we delivered and delivered very well. Because if you look at it, sir, the dispute is in as far as the presidential election is concerned. The other parliamentary, in as much as people will go to court and petition, which is their right, the rightful position to do that, the presidential is contested. A number of things, in my opinion. One, we have a system that the loser gets nothing. Number two is not good enough. If you're not number one, you lose. So you have someone who has gotten 6 or 5 million voters, but has not qualified to be the president.
They go home with nothing. It also happens in America.
Yes,
even where 70 million people have voted.
True.
I think the problem lies elsewhere, other than just saying that, it's a winner take it all. But I'm saying, so you believe that the commission is not to blame for the problems you have had with the presidential election?
No,
it's a fact that people don't just accept losing. That's your view?
One of the reasons, as a commission...
You know that in 2017, the Supreme Court nullified the presidential election.
Yes, it did.
That was an indictment of the IEBC. Are there lessons you drew from that nullification?
Yes, indeed, sir. It was
just mention 2 lessons you learned yourself.
As a person,
I know you are not in policy,
yeah,
but you learned.
One of the lessons I learned is that it's important for the commission to have a stable leadership close to the election. Unfortunately, what happened in 2017, and you know it as much as I do, we had commissioners coming in months to the election. A lot of systems had been put in place, yes, but remember there's a change of leadership. When there's a change of leadership, a number of things go wrong. Number two, there was the passing of laws very close to the election. If you remember the 2016 the agreement that brought in the new commission, there were a number of changes that were made. In my opinion, sir, one of the things we did wrong as an institution and perhaps as a country, previously, returning officers would bring their hard copy result forms to Bomas of Kenya. This time round, we were just transmitting and not bringing them, what was loosely called trooping. In my opinion, that trooping should not have been rolled out. It should never have been removed. But yes, coming to your question, we have learned lessons. There's a lot we have picked, and I'm just praying that we'll be able to do 2022 a little bit differently. When we went into the... Yes.
Now, when you talked about boundaries delimitation.
Yes.
We have quite a number of constituencies in this country, and IEBC is likely to review boundaries to either increase or change the names. What do you think is the relationship between population and boundaries review?
The relationship is that when we're doing boundary delimitation or review, population quota matters. So it's the population quota that, among other factors, that informs the number of...
I'm asking why.
Why
is population important?
Because it's important to have, as close as possible, an equal number of inhabitants in a constituency so that the weight of one ballot, the weight of the ballot is the same across. And for development, most importantly, it's important that the number is as close as possible in all constituencies.
What do you mean by development?
What do I mean by development?
We elect somebody to go to parliament to speak for us.
Yes.
We have county governments that have devolution. They distribute resources to their people. What do you mean by development?
What I mean by development is if a constituency is too vast, allow me to go back to Kajiado North, which is one that I'm very familiar with. If a constituency is too vast, the distribution of development projects, how do I put it, education, water, sanitation, the distribution would definitely be different to a constituency that is that large, that has a number, even forget about the numbers, the size itself I don't know what the English word would be, but the centering of these people, how they would be distributed, that would affect the distribution of development for the constituency, sir.
Do you think the High Court has already expressed an opinion that members of parliament have no business undertaking development and managing CDF? Do you think if CDF was taken away from members of parliament, do you think it would matter anymore how many people are in a constituency?
Yes, because I want to look at it from an electoral expert's point of view, the weight of the ballot. In as much as we would want to see development and what CDF is doing, for us is the weight of the ballot. You do not want to have a member of parliament elected by the number of people that would be electing a county assembly ward representative, for instance. There is the weight of the ballot.
The weight of the ballot?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask you a related question. IEBC is required to review boundaries and to consider all those circumstances within how many years?
8 years and 12 years maximum.
Can you do it mid-term? Can you review for one constituency only?
No, I
Why?
don't think you can review for one constituency
Why?
only. Because when it comes to boundary delimitation, one, IBC cannot review the numbers. We only do the boundaries and the names for constituencies. But I don't think, and forgive me, I'm not a lawyer, but I don't think legally it would be provided for unless there is the legal mechanism. I don't think as it is right now, it's provided for to be able to review for one constituency.
You have talked about the weight of a vote as a driving force with respect to the commission. We now have Konza City. 1 million people move to Konza City. They automatically change the weight, they register to vote, they change the weight of a vote.
Right.
Because there is development that has been taken there,
yes.
And 1 million people who are not there have moved. And tomorrow, next year, there will be another 1 million people who move to that city, and they register as voters within a constituency. Are you saying that then it will not matter that now we have 2 million people in one constituency who are now voting for one person, and IEBC cannot change that so that you ensure that there is equal weight for every vote?
IEBC cannot dictate where a voter, for instance, chooses to go and live. If I chose, for instance, to move because of for various reasons, the same way there is the mass movement from the rural areas to urban looking for opportunities. Assuming, for instance, there was to be this exodus movement to Konza City because of the opportunities it provides and because of openings that people would be looking for, the position of IEBC will be guided by the rule of law. IEBC will be guided by the provisions within the law that provide for delimitation. If then it changes so that the consideration is no longer just population quota among other things, then we would stand advised.
Yeah, that's the reason why I was asking is because
yes.
This is a session for the law
yes.
and the policy, because you want to join the commission and it's about policy. So you think from the point of view of the commission, if population patterns change, before the lapse of the 8 years,
yes.
and they change so astronomically, that, one member of parliament has 2 million voters. You believe that there is no legal framework for the commission to intervene and make changes?
As it is right now, and I stand
Nothing.
corrected and educated by yourself, who is a lawyer, I'm not. If there, as it is right now, IEBC cannot, or I don't think we can. Of course, it would put a strain, but for us, our hands would be tied in as far as we can put in an advisory, assuming, but if the law were to be changed, then it would be a number of other stakeholders and players to do that. Ours would be to abide by the rule of law.
You wouldn't lobby parliament?
Lobby parliament.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Madam Nice, and all the best. Thank you very
sir.
much, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kimuli. I'll now request Dr. F.S. Abdallah to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Chair. I think I have the option to use the name of Paloshe. Maybe I prefer
yes,
that. Would you
yes.
mind on that?
Yes, Dr. Ari.
That comes to with your culture and your background, Masai.
No, Paloshe is okay.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. From your CV, from 2018 to date, I see you have got a lot of responsibility and you are right deep into the management.
Yes, sir. True.
Thank you. Now, I think you coordinate the commission with the commissioners and all other activities, right?
I do.
Good. Now, I do appreciate that every person, every system, every product, and every idea has faults. I do agree that.
Indeed.
Right? In the best case scenario, an awareness of this fact can lead to a determined pursuit of perfection.
What return to
What I'm saying, if we accept and know the awareness that there is a fault in all these things, we will only work towards perfecting the mistakes. Are we together?
Yes, we are.
Right. Now, in many cases, focusing too strongly and on the flaws on an idea or project stifles the open and positive approach that is essential for good working practice. Are we together? Mm-hmm. When you keep on, or when we keep on insisting that there is a flaw and you keep on hammering to that, it does not give the opportunity of the openness to dictate the mistake and be debated on it.
True, true.
We in agreement.
We
to
are
that.
in agreement,
Right.
sir.
At your position, have you come across such a scenario, and what did you do?
Thank you, Dr. Yes, I have. One of the things we have suffered as an institution is the continuous bashing, the continuous, after every general election, or basically after every election. Whenever there is a conclusion of an election, the winners will be praising us and thinking we are the best electoral management body. But the loser will be bashing us. So one of the things we have suffered as an institution, and quite frankly, it's been ongoing forever, is the bashing and the permanent call to disband the institution. From where I sit, whenever there's, actually, we've gotten to a point where even the assurance of the permanency of your job is not, did I miss it, sir? Is not guaranteed.
I think we're missing it. Okay. I'm talking about the institution itself, not the outside effect.
Yeah, so...
You know, you had some ideas and you wanted to do them, and because some of your colleagues did not agree with it, so it's, you got to bash it.
Very well. I pray that I get your question. But when I have an idea and some of my colleagues do not agree or do not think it should go that way, is that where you're coming from, sir? I'm just trying to seek clarification.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. That's where we are. And says, either you've got an idea, it's not agreed, and instead of not agreeing, people bash on your ideas, and there is, there's no openness.
No, what happens, well, assuming I had an idea from the office that I represent, I would put it together and go through the rightful channels to present it to management. Two things can happen. I can table it before management. Management accepts it and it goes on to the committee level and then finally goes to plenary. If at management, it starts from the directorate. So whichever directorate I sit in, I present my idea. The idea is listened to. If it gets buy-in at that level, it proceeds to management. If it gets buy-in at management, it proceeds to the committee and finally plenary. When it gets to plenary, which is where the commissioners will sit, then it's approved. But yes, if you could bring an idea, and even at the directorate level, you don't get buy-in, and it's okay to have divergent opinions. It's okay to have different views on matters. So, but often you bring it, and if it's for the larger good of the institution, you get the buy-in.
Right. What initiative have you been responsible for in your current or previous position to demonstrate your track record in policy development and oversight?
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. In 2017, like I mentioned, together with the Directorate of ICT, it was actually my idea that we put together a small team. We didn't even have a budget. So what we did, I got a number of temporary staff that were attached to other directorates. We put together a small team and were stationed in one of the offices at the headquarters. And my idea was, if we train this small team, the returning officers, and this is informed by the fact that I had served as a returning officer, and therefore I knew and understood the challenges I would encounter. So we put this team together and trained them. So as a returning officer, during the CRMS, the Candidate Registration Management System, which we were implementing, if you encountered a challenge, you did not have to look for one director. You just had to call us. We had representation round the table. It was a very small office. That was my initiative. And it was from that then I forwarded to the commission the request that in the National Elections Communication Center, we continue with the same arrangement where I had the Operation Support Unit. The Operation Support Unit was targeting support to the constituency, or rather to the field officers. The 290 constituencies, the 47 counties. And we also had the public support. So as a member of the public, you could call the call center because we had publicized our numbers. You call the call center and tell us, this is my number, I'm registered at this station, but I cannot find my specific, allow me to use stream, because that is the word that Kenyans were using a lot. So we offered support not only to our staff, but also to the public. That was, again, my initiative, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, have you heard this phrase saying that a new broom sweeps clean and an old one knows all the corners? You heard of this?
I have heard it.
You know what it means, yeah? It can
I
be
do.
looked at both ways.
I do, yeah.
Now, you have been part and parcels of the bad publicity of IEBC to a certain extent, whether it's right or wrong, right? And you've been part and parcel of the presidential nullifications and all this. What new can you bring to the IEBC?
You're right. There's a saying that a new broom sweeps better, and there's also the saying that every small girl thinks they'll be a better cook than their mother. Sometimes you actually turn out to be better cook than your mother. But that old broom could actually be in the wrong hands, and given the right hand, it could work. What new do I bring? I have been impactful, effectful at my own little level. As a manager, I have been impactful. I have results, indicators that I could show at that level. Now, given a bigger forum, given a wider stage of influence, I have no doubt that I will be even more impactful, because then I will be influencing policy, not just executing policy that has been made from elsewhere. Daktari.
That's a good, courageous Maasai.
Yes, indeed.
Good.
Thank you,
Now, tell
Daktari.
me, during the elections of the scale and magnitude of our general elections, hiring of temporary workers on short-term contract is inevitable. Please tell this panel as to what risks are associated with such employment, and what measures have the IBC put in place to mitigate this such, not what they'll put in place.
What it has put in place.
Yes.
I hope I got you right. I'm struggling to hear, because your English is a bit more Mzunguish, so I'm struggling to follow. I hope I follow, Daktari.
I'll be more than obliged to read and to go through again.
But if what you are asking is what measures we have put to mitigate the risk of having temporary staff.
Correct.
One, it is inevitable that we will have temporary staff during an election, because we cannot provide, for instance, it is inevitable. So what we do to mitigate, we have invested heavily on training. I happen to be one of the master trainers in the commission. I am very good in training. So we have invested heavily in training. The reason we have invested heavily in training is to reduce the chances of mistakes. The other thing we do, we administer an oath of secrecy, and you sign a code of conduct, which then gives us the opportunity, should you mess it up, we can take you on and take disciplinary measures on account of what you signed. So if you contravene this, it's on pay.
Haya, crocodile inaweza tokea juu. Hiyo sijakula hata unataka nikufe kabla ni. I don't like it. I don't. Kai na hipo ikitokelezea ivuruche simu yangu. No, ni sawa. Those who know me will tell you I'm not a lover of large volumes of water.
But for you, we rove the different parts of the country and beyond just to make sure that we bring you the experience. We educate you, we entertain you, and we inform you.
That it's not political and it can do something.
As we sail the boat of Morning Cafe to enlighten you, entertain you, and inform you every Monday to Friday, only on TV 47.
Woo. Construction can be quite a task, but how do you move from finding your piece of land, sourcing the right materials, getting the right labor force to put up your building? Or better yet, how do you source for a building that's already built?
Just a small size of land can suit just a big maisonette because you are going high.
How do you ensure you get the right finishes to bring out the aesthetic value of your property and make it not only look good, but also feel good?
The buyers in this area are the buyers who are able to pay cash.
Well, we have it right here on The Realtor on TV 47, where we demystify building right.
Ensure that our register is up to date. One, we do continuous registration of voters. Number two, we do what we call deletion of deceased voters. So there's continuous cleaning up of the register. And then we also carry out fresh registration whenever there's been a review of boundaries in respect of that specific area. If the boundaries of a constituency or a ward have changed, then we carry out a fresh registration to make sure that we have a register that is up to date in as far as the changes that have taken place. So yes, there is the deletion, there is the continuous registration, and there is the inspection, which unfortunately many Kenyans do not know. There is actually the day-to-day inspection of the register. As a registered voter, you can walk into your registration center and request to look at your own individual details and update them. If, for instance, my name has changed from Naisiai to have acquired some other name, then I can walk into the registration center and seek to update my details.
Thank you. Let me give you a scenario question. You've just been appointed to be Commissioner of IEBC, and an adult citizen of Kenya comes to you and tells you that it is now 5 months since he or she applied to be registered as a voter in some constituency in Nairobi, let's say Kamkunji. But to date, the registration officer has not included his or her name in the register of voters on the grounds that the person is not qualified. What advice will you give that voter and anchor your advice in the provisions of the law?
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Solonka. One of the reasons why a voter would be disqualified from registration is, one, if you are of unsound mind. Number two, if you have been declared, there is a legal word they use which I cannot remember, but if you have been declared bankrupt, then you have committed an offense under the Election Offences Act. In this case, then you're barred from registration. But what avenues are available to this particular voter? One, you fill a claim form. You fill a claim form, which claim form then, because you asked, given the position of a commissioner, I would advise the voter, have you filled a claim form? If you haven't filled the claim form, let the claim form go to the returning officer. The returning officer makes a determination based on the available guidelines. The determination of the returning officer can be challenged by the specific voter. If the voter challenges the determination of the returning officer, then the voter can go to the principal magistrate. The principal magistrate will make a determination based on law and facts. If, again, as a voter, you're still dissatisfied by the decision of the principal magistrate, then you can proceed to the High Court. At the High Court, the decisions will be based on law and law alone.
So is that the end of the journey for this voter?
Ideally, it should be, because one, our returning officers would never refuse to register anyone if they are qualified. But if you go to the High Court and it's determined, and then the decision of the High Court is final.
It's final.
Yes, sir.
Okay, let's go to political rights and Article 38 of the Constitution. It provides that a citizen has a right to be registered as a voter and also to be a candidate for public office or office within a political party of which a citizen is a member, and if elected, to hold office. Now, we have this thing called voter suppression. How has it been used to infringe a voter's or a candidate's right to be elected to hold an office?
Thank you, Mr. Solonka. Voter suppression is real, and it's happening up until today. Voter suppression is basically, I will try and put it in a way that is easy to understand. It's a technique that is used largely by political players to skew or to influence the outcome of an election by denying a segment of the electorate the opportunity to vote, thereby disenfranchising them. And this particular practice, unscrupulous practice, has been rife in even developed democracies. For instance, like in the US, if you read about voter suppression, it has been used over the years, largely against the minority, the coloreds, and people of low income. In our country, in the present day situation, what happens is you will find people who have been disenfranchised, one, are denied the necessary documentation to register as voters. And during election, you will find people who have been misinformed not to vote. Their particular documentation that would be a requirement to vote are actually bought or taken away from them. This is the kind of suppression that this is what voter suppression is. And this is done basically to skew an outcome of an election to a preferred end or candidate.
That's one. Are there other ways that voter suppression can be perpetrated?
I have mentioned the denying. Yes, there is. There is bribery. You're bribed to sell your vote, and therefore you don't get to cast. There is gerrymandering, where the boundaries are messed up and thereby denying a specific area an opportunity to have representation and to be able to register and vote. And most commonly, violence. There's a lot of violence. When there's violence, people stay away because nobody wants to put themselves in harm's way. So there's violence, there's bribery, there's gerrymandering, among others. Sir.
So speaking of gerrymandering, and we know that the responsibility to delimit boundaries rests on IEBC. Are you saying that an election management body can engage itself in that vice of gerrymandering?
No. IEBC or any credible EMB would not engage in gerrymandering. This would be done. Remember, IEBC can only review the names and boundaries. We cannot increase or decrease the number of constituencies because it's stipulated in law. IEBC can only look at the county assemblies. But as any professional elections management body, and which IEBC is, we wouldn't sink to the level of doing anything like this, sir.
Okay, and what will you do to address that issue of voter suppression should you become a commissioner?
Thank you, sir. One of the things that would be very useful is enhanced and targeted voter education. Targeted because you would be looking at the specific segment of the population or of the electorate that is prone to these vices, particularly bribery. So you would be targeting areas that are prone to bribery. I mean, the young people particularly. So you would specify the voter education to address this. And one of the most important things is if we could get it into the hearts of the young people, that casting your vote is actually basically you deciding the direction the leadership goes. So we would tailor voter education to target these areas, tailor it to target the issues of gerrymandering, involve other stakeholders, and most importantly, network with security agencies so there is adequate provision of security during an electoral activity, in which then you will not have people staying away from polling because of insecurity.
Thank you. Briefly explain to me these, the following electoral terms. What is party primary?
Party primary.
Yeah.
Party primary, honorable panelist, is a process through which political parties pick, elect, based of course on their regulations, their guidelines of the specific party. It is the process of them picking candidates for election.
Okay. And what about the term campaign?
Campaign. I have to be very careful not to mess up campaign and campaign period. Campaign is that activity of the candidates selling their ideals, selling what they stand for to the electorate, basically selling yourself to the electorate to prove that you're worth being elected.
And what is a campaign period?
Campaign period is a period provided for within the law from when a candidate is nominated until the time of election. That period provided for them to walk around the specific electoral area, selling your ideals, selling whatever it is you stand for. And normally what we do as an institution is we would require of the specific candidates to provide their campaign calendars just to make sure that we are guided when you know where a candidate is at any specific time during the campaign period.
Thank you. And what about a spoiled ballot? What is it?
A spoiled ballot?
Yes.
A spoiled ballot is that ballot paper issued to a voter but does not get into the box. Does not get into the box because when we issue the ballot to you as a voter, sir, you go to mark it and then you realize, no, I have picked Naisai and yet I wanted to pick a different candidate. So you bring it back to me as a presiding officer at the station. You bring it back to me and tell me, no, I cannot cast this. I take it, I remove what we call the foil, I stick it together with the foil and put it in a tamper-proof envelope. So that particular, then I issue the voter with another ballot, which you now go to cast. The voter can spoil that one again and is issued with another one. Normally, you are allowed 2 replacements from the and then the original one. And that is why when we are issuing ballot papers, we provide for a margin to cover that. So that spoiled ballot paper does not get into the box, but is stored in a specific tamper-proof envelope and is returned during the reconciliation of ballot papers.
Thank you, Madam Naisai. I wish you all the best.
Thank you, sir.
Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Solonka. I'll now request Madam Elizabeth Mayo to ask you some questions, Ms. Paloshe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. How are you, Tobiko? Are you ready?
Yes, ma'am, I'm ready. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Madam Tobiko, the IEBC strategic plan is anchored on the context of the Kenya Vision 2030 aspiration of democratic system, that is, it should be issue-based, people-centered, result-oriented, and must be accountable to the people of Kenya. Kindly tell us some of the principal tenets of Kenya Vision 2030 in regard to the desired political system.
It is, sorry, allow me to just seek clarity. Vision 2030 in
regard to the desired political system in the country.
Very well. Vision 2030 basically looks at a more stable and a more economically secure country, and what that would do, for instance, in as far as securing a more desired electoral system in the country, is it would address some of the avenues that are left open by the gaps, for instance, of skewed development, and the economic gaps. So when these gaps are addressed by Vision 2030, it creates a more conducive environment for the electoral democracy of the country to flourish, and even for the EMB to be able to get. It would address some of the gaps or some of the weaknesses that make it easier for the electorate to be manipulated.
Okay, thank you. Maybe you can read that document on Vision 2030.
Very well.
We'll get all the details. So in the next one, you said you've been in IEBC for 10 or 11 years?
This is my 11th year.
11th year, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so you have experience on the gaps, what needs to be done, and even what has been done well, yeah?
Yes.
So, Madam Tobiko, in the 21st century, Kenya as a country is a country that actually should be ahead in terms of technology.
Yeah.
So, in your view, why do you think that we should still be waking up very early in the morning to go and queue so that we vote for leaders of our choice? When you look at Kiambaa, just the by-election which was done recently, the media actually highlighted there was an old lady who could not walk. She was being carried on a plastic chair to the polling station. So being somebody who is an insider, what do you think can be done differently such that the electoral process in this country is simple and at the same time you maintain the credibility?
True. I agree with you, Madam Mayo, that there is need for us as a country, of course, given the days we are living in, to simplify and to, how do I put it, to enhance the use of technology. I want to appreciate that we have made baby steps. Baby steps in the sense that we have moved from the traditional black book registration. We have moved from the traditional OMR, the registration, and we have since introduced or tried to mainstream the use of technology in elections. We have made progress in as far as the nomination, because now we have what we call the candidate registration, and we have made progress in as far as identification of voters. But yes, there is still a lot for us to do. And why haven't we done this? One, legally, the provision is such that it's progressive. We have reached a certain level. My prayer is that we will be able to do that. But perhaps allow me to point out that as an electorate, as the citizen of Kenya, there is permanently some sort of mistrust around the issue of election and technology. Mistrust to the extent that you feel like I have got to physically get there and get this ballot paper and guard my ballot paper. If you look at the use of technology in particularly in Africa, I think Namibia is the only country where I have seen them doing electronic voting. In 2014, they did they have automated everything. They did an electronic voting. Of course, the argument could be that their electoral register is a lot smaller, but there is introduction. I want to agree with you that we ought to be heading to the point where you can vote from the comfort of your house. What can be done then is, as we continuously address the issue of mistrust amongst ourselves, and which then will require us to bring in all the relevant stakeholders, because if you're going to sell a specific technology to the people, there has got to be buy-in. And most importantly, it has got to be simple and accurate so that my mother in the village is able to use it. And that shouldn't be a problem because, we are using M-Pesa as a country, and even the old who have not gone to school are able to use it. We ought to be making steps towards that. But we ought to be addressing the elephant in the room, is the issue of mistrust. That, in my opinion, is what we ought to be addressing as an electoral management body. And my view of it would be that we engage stakeholders more, engage particularly the young people. They are more advanced technologically. They actually have the solutions. We would be surprised that our young people would actually have the relevant solutions. So as a commissioner, I would perhaps encourage and even try to operationalize an idea from a young person. And I have seen young people who have come to the commission to try and sell ideas of a full technology used in elections management. I would perhaps encourage that and try it at a small scale, even if it's just to pilot it and slowly sell it to the country. Because the minute you introduce it with a bang, there is bound to be resistance. But if we go gradually, introduce it step by step, carry along with us the stakeholders, relevant stakeholders, then we'll be able to buy in. But I do agree with you, we ought to have made more steps in as far as mainstreaming the use of technology in elections is concerned.
Oh, thank you for that. So you agree with me that that should be the direction we are?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you've talked of the elephant in the room, that is the mistrust. So how will you deal with the issue of mistrust such that you gain the confidence of Kenyans in any system you are going to put in place to make it simple for them to vote?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the challenges we face as an institution is the minute we are bashed, we recline, sit back, and allow the public to make opinions and draw perceptions about us. I did mention in the beginning that one of my strengths is communication and networking. My prayer would be that if successful, my prayer on the table would be, let us carry along every stakeholder, every process of the commission. Let's open it up to scrutiny, involve them. If it's registration of voters, we carry them along so that what we are doing, they don't just get to see us launching a product or publicizing a product, but we carry along every stakeholder. Someone said in one of electoral events I attended that election is too serious an activity to be left to the EMB alone. And I couldn't agree more. It is such a serious activity. In schools, there's what we call the Parent-Teachers Association, because the success of a school does not only depend on the teachers or the students. The students have their role, the teachers have their role, then we parents have their role. The same thing for the institution that is IEBC, the EMB. We have stakeholders who ought to be engaged, who ought to be involved. And I did mention, ma'am, that my background in diplomacy and communication, I really pray that given an opportunity, I will be able to bring this and use the networking. We have very good will from stakeholders. We just need to carry them along with us to the extent that, we protect the sovereignty of the country, but allow them to be involved with us. Tailor-make voter education programs. Sit down with the many voter education providers and tailor-make it so that we own it. Because if I carry you along, then it's our work. It's not my work as IEBC, it's our work. We take responsibility together and we pride ourselves in the successes together. That is what I would seek to bring to the table, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, madam. So the other issue is on spoiled votes.
Yes.
So some errors resulting in spoiled votes are due to lack of awareness of basic voter requirements. And you have talked of voter education. Yeah? Yes. So how will you enhance voter education such that we don't have this problem come 2022? Or we reduce the errors?
Yes.
Yeah.
We may not entirely eliminate it, but I agree with you, we can reduce. And if we can show progressively that we have been reducing over time, then we would have something to pride ourselves in. What I would want to bring to the allow me. The question is, how do we then better voter education to reduce this?
Yeah.
How to better voter education, in my opinion, and it's something that the institution has lately embraced, is we need to introduce voter education at the level of primary school, class 7, class 8, and even secondary schools. Now we are seeing many schools approaching us to go and conduct election. If we start instilling this culture in the young ones, start instilling it in them so that we tailor voter education. The young ones, we have a specific curriculum for them. But come to those who are in third form and fourth form, who are about to attain the age of majority and then be registered as voters, specifically ingrain it, put it in, inculcate it in them, the need to own the electoral process. They need to know that my vote determines the direction of this country. And doing that, you actually start teaching them in progressively. But come to specific voter education. I would want it tailored in a way that it covers the various segments of the electorate. For instance, if we are covering an area like Kajiado, why not carry voter education programs in a language they understand? Approach the local stations, let it be done in a language that these people understand. If you're addressing the youth, tailor the voter education content to a language that they can easily identify, so that this particular content is tailored for a specific audience. Because you cannot assume that it's a one-fit-all. But if we tailor it to fit the various segments of the electorate, then it becomes easy. It's easy for them to break it down and to consume. So if it's the use of local languages, vernacular, the radio stations, partner with the media, every community now has, close to every community has a radio station. So make use of this and capitalize on this particular program to target that specific area so that it's not an one-fit-all.
Thank you, Madam Tobiko. Let me ask you, just the final question.
Yes, ma'am.
You have given very, very good strategies on how to enhance voter education. Why is it not being done?
Why is it not being done? Maybe it is being done, but to a smaller scale. And when I say maybe it is being done, it's because I know when I was in the field, for instance, I actually would go and educate people in my mother tongue, comfortably. In fact, when we were conducting the mock election in Kajiado North, the observers who observed the process, one of the things they wrote is that the returning officer speaks too much Maasai. But I spoke too much Maasai because the electorate was largely Maasai, and they needed for me to explain it to them. Why hasn't it been done? I think it's a gap, rightfully, I own it. I own it as a member of the commission, of the secretariat. I own it, and we have a long way to go. Of course, we have the issue of finances, because voter education ought to be continuous, but then the budget. Let me point it out. Voter education is actually one of the components in the electoral system that the political players or the powers that be feel like, no, nani ajui kupiga kura. It's one area that can easily have the budget chopped off to put it in more critical areas, whereas voter education is extremely critical.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Mayor. I'll now request the Vice Chair to ask you a few questions.
Yeah. Yes, nice. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. 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 Well, you're aware we're interviewing for a leadership position,
yes,
the highest in the commission, and that's what you're interested in. Just kindly tell me, how many directorates are in the IEBC? How many directorates are there?
We have 9 at the moment.
Okay.
Yes.
Those are which ones?
We have human resource and development. Okay. We have finance. We have procurement. We have ICT. We have research and boundaries. We have the Directorate of Risk, Audit and Risk. We have legal, and we have ICT, and we have voter registration and electoral operations.
And your position falls at what level? Is it a directorate?
Manager.
How many managers are there?
The managers are many, because what happens is in a specific directorate, you would find sometimes more than one managers. Mm-hmm. For instance, my position currently is manager in charge of commission services, but I fall under the Directorate of Legal. Under legal, you'll find there is one director, and then there is the manager in charge of prosecution. There's a manager in charge of investigation. So we have around 26 managers as at now.
So you report to the Director Legal?
Yes, sir. Structurally, I report to the Director Legal, but functionally, on a day-to-day basis, I report to the CEO, the Chief Electoral Officer, because I deal with commission services, and therefore I deal directly with the Chief Electoral Officer.
Now, I'm just looking at, you're passionate and about the issues and what you do. You're passionate about communication. You're passionate about communicating the commission and voter education and doing things. Why have you, in those 10 years, tried to go for the position of director voter education or director communication, information and communication?
Forgive me, Honourable Vice Chair. I forgot to mention one very critical directorate, the Directorate of Voter Education, Partnership and communication.
Yes, that one.
I should have gone for that one, right? There hasn't been a vacancy. Our structure is such that it does not particularly facilitate growth. Unfortunately, there are those of us who joined the commission as CEC, what we call constituency election coordinators, and are still at the same position. With all humility, I must admit that I've been lucky. I have at least moved one step since 2010 up until now. Our structure is not very facilitative. So because it's fixed. So unless a director moves, retires, or goes elsewhere, I have very little chance of moving upward.
Yeah, fine. Now, for this particular position that you applied for, what do you think?
Sorry?
For the position you applied for,
yes, sir.
As commissioner, what do you think, from where you sit now, that you'll be able to do on the commission that you're not able to do where you are as manager, working with the others in the other directorates? What do you think you'll be able to do at that level?
Allow me to create a scenario. If I am at this level where I receive and execute, it's very easy when I'm at the lower level of the food chain, it's very easy for me to point out gaps. And yes, at our various forums, and we have different forums in the institution, at the various forums, there are gaps that we observe. As someone who has been at the lower level at the institution, according to the organogram, there are few gaps that I would point out, but I'm limited in as far as the scope is concerned. Now, getting the position of commissioner would give me that scope, would give me that platform and that forum to be able to point out these gaps and thereby tailor policy around these gaps. Another thing I'd be able to do is, having served at the constituency level, I know the various challenges, the various things I keep wishing for, and that the returning officers, the constituency elections coordinators, would wish to see addressed. I have the advantage of having wished for the same, but only been able to address it to the extent that my scope of influence allows. This particular position of commissioner would then give me that particular platform and voice to air some of these things and tailor our policy around this, so that policy is very specific to address specific concerns of the institution.
Do you have policies in these areas? Water education?
We do.
Is there a policy on information, communication?
Communication, yes, we do.
And there are strategies?
Yes.
And who oversees that whole gamut of implementing these policies?
The reporting structure is such that you have directorates that report directly to the CEO, and you have directorates that would report to the deputy CEO in charge of operations and the deputy CEO in charge of support services. So the structure is very clear, and we are systematic to the extent that you must follow the specific structure. So a directorate, for instance, like voter education, where communication is domiciled at, communication falls under voter education. In all honesty, I think it was not the right thing to do for us, or rather those who conceived the idea of setting up the directorates, because communication is a very critical arm of the institution. It ought to have been a directorate, a standalone directorate, so that it's separate from voter education, because what happens is you find communication, and they have excellent policies. Our communication department, it's not a directorate, it's a department, has excellent policies. But my view of it would be that if it was a directorate, it would be a lot easier, and they would have better voice to execute these policies. As a commissioner, what I would do, as someone who's very passionate about communication, I would perhaps be able to run with it and own it and breathe more life to the policies. We have excellent staff at the department and at the directorate as a whole, but I wish it was such that communication was given the importance it ought to deserve, so that it's not a hidden department of a standalone directorate.
Supposing you are CEO.
If I was CEO, I would introduce a Directorate of Communication.
Great. Yeah. No, where I'm leading to is policy up there. And you say there are policies in all these areas and there are structures, but things are not moving for various reasons. And that's really at the implementation level. And that's the secretariat. The secretariat is the arm, is the engine of IEBC. These makers can do whatever they want, but if policies are not being implemented, if things are not being run efficiently, there's very little they can do up there. They can only wait for reports. So the engine of IEBC is at the secretariat level. That's really what I'm driving at. And listening to you, the passion and drive, I'm just wondering whether you're not better off doing those things as the CEO of IEBC instead of, but it's your interest to serve on the board. Now, moving on to challenges, which my colleagues have touched on. 2017, IEBC was challenged.
Right.
Yeah? And essentially the court ruled that there was systemic failure. Yeah? From where you sit or from where you sat at that time, did you see any aspect of those failures, that systemic failure in implementing and doing things right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. And unfortunately, it's unfortunate that it was picked that there were irregularities and illegalities. I will leave the illegalities to the lawyers, but the irregularities, for me, puzzles me because we invested heavily in training. We were thorough in training. We have a department of electoral training that is domiciled at the Directorate of Voter Registration and Electoral Operations. And we did a splendid job of training the temporary officers. How the illegalities, or rather the irregularities, because the irregularities were basically in the filling of forms. There were issues of filling of forms correctly. I wish I could point out and say this is what went wrong, because we invested in training. Of course, there was the issue of transmission of results, which was a very critical component in the disputed presidential election. That one, we may not have much to do with it because it's about the network coverage of the area. But in as far as filling of forms and the whole conduct at the polling station is concerned, for me, I feel very particularly about it because I know how much we devoted to it. I know how much we put. I don't know, did we then get the wrong temporary electoral officers? I wish I knew. But I know for a fact we gave our all. We gave our all in as far as the conduct of that election particularly is concerned.
Now, just quickly, we are moving to 2022.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, another election.
Right.
What do you propose to solve that particular problem you're mentioning? You're talking of filling of forms and getting things wrong. What measures would you propose to solve that problem?
One of the things I would pray that we observe as a country is that let us not change electoral laws too close to an activity. It throws a spanner in the works. You have trained about a specific way of doing it, then the law is changed at the last minute. We had changes too close to 2017. Now, when that happens, even the manuals we had prepared, the curriculums we had prepared, everything is affected, and that throws you off balance. So I would pray that we do not change electoral laws too close to an electoral activity, particularly an activity as major as a general election. Number one. Number two, we ought to partner with more stakeholders that would help to provide more financing on the training aspect of on electoral training, specifically electoral training. I think we need to put more of our focus on electoral training. And I know this is dreaming, but I wish we could start slowly introducing an electoral curriculum in institutions so that, these who are attaining the age of majority one day when they apply to work for us as temporary staff or even permanent staff, then it would be required, have you taken any course? The way we used to do something called GHC in primary school, I wish we could introduce an aspect of electoral training in our secondary schools and colleges. And it wouldn't take much because we have the curriculum. It's just introduced so that we go back to institutionalizing and inculcating in us a culture of ownership of our electoral processes.
Thank you, Nasia.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair. I'll now request Reverend Father Mutie to ask you a few questions.
Thank you, Chair. I would wish to ask you a few questions, Madam Paloshi.
Yes, sir.
Now, in your CV, you alluded to the fact that you are liaison between the commissioners and the staff.
Yes, Father.
But you're also reporting to the director?
To the CEO.
The CEO?
Yes, Father.
Now, the commissioners and the secretariat have been seen not to be reading from the same page for some time. Have you tried to, from what you've tried to analyze, when my brother, the panelist, asked you a question, have you tried to engage on this? And what could be the issue?
Thank you, Father. Allow me to put it this way. Leadership and personality traits, or better still, personality traits and personality attributes influence leadership. Common knowledge, we have had challenges as an institution between the Secretariat and the Commission. Or particularly the Commission and the CEO. Because hardly does it come down to the Secretariat. Luckily, because between the commissioners and the Secretariat, there is the CEO. So then the CEO takes the blows or the punch for us, the junior staff. But my thinking of it is our structure as it is right now, there are two centers of power. Centers of power in as much as we have very well laid out expectations, regulations, because everybody knows their part as far as the Constitution is concerned. But there's still a power struggle. I think one thing that is missing is the soft skills. And soft skills here, I mean that soft power where you're able to engage and you're able to sort out our differences, differ in the boardroom, have divergent opinion, disagree. But then when it comes to the public, we ought to be able to adopt a common position. When I mention soft power, I'm just looking for a way to phrase it further, and I don't know how, but I'm thinking I wish it was possible to have, when the chairperson of the commission is male, I wish it was possible to have the CEO being of a different gender. This way then, and particularly women are known to be very good with soft skills and the soft power. Firm, but then very good in using soft power. If in my opinion, and this is purely my opinion, not that of the institution, I wish we had alternate genders at the point of the 2 points of decision making, because the CEO's position is a decision making position. It is a center of power. The chairperson's position is that of it's a center of power. I wish we had a situation where we employ a bit more of soft skills and a bit more of tact communication, so that we differ here, but come out to the public and adopt unanimous and common position. It's a very tricky area for the Mutie, and I wish I could sit here and tell you I have a magic wand or the solution. I don't, but I will bring my 2 cents to the table. I will bring my voice to the table, and I pray that I will be able to, at the very least, act as a voice of reason and and encourage a harmonious working relationship, because we need all of us to be able to speak in one voice.
Thank you. It's also in the public that, the public perception of IEBC, it is not, if you look at it, and if it is rated, it is below the mark. As a staff, have you tried to think through the public perception on IEBC?
You're right, Father Mutie. We have suffered low ratings in the eyes of the public. And from where I sit, one of the biggest contributors to our low rating is the weakness. We have a weak communication link. Weak to the extent that we all reclined and no longer tell our story. No longer tell our story because if the public, for instance, understood exactly what we go through and what the electoral officials, IEBC has one of the most qualified and professional officers, both at the field and the headquarters. We have an extremely professional secretariat. And if we were to tell our story, for instance, the challenges of 2017, what the public knows is the irregularities and illegalities. The public does not know that we have staff that were beaten up in the line of duty. We actually have, unfortunately, lost some staff. We did in some volatile areas. If we were to tell the public this, perhaps the public would not really sympathize with that, but appreciate the environment within which we work, because we work in a very high voltage environment. If we told our story more, if we opened ourselves just a little more to allow the public to look into what happens in IEBC so that it's not shrouded in some ministry of sorts, some mystery of sorts, if we were just to open it a bit and allow the public to appreciate that by the time a returning officer is bringing, or rather presiding officer is bringing results from the polling station, they have suffered a lot. Sometimes we are beaten, but we don't tell the story. We sit back. If we allowed the public a glimpse into what we go through, perhaps they would appreciate the challenges we encounter and maybe not roll out the red carpet for us, but just encourage us so that in addition to bashing us, and it's okay to bash and criticize us, also just encourage us. That we have failed to tell. We have failed to tell our story.
Thank you. In your CV, you gave us your personal values as professional integrity and transparency, stewardship and accountability, and teamwork. Now, if I were to ask you, has this worked in line with the vision of IEBC?
Yes, Father, it has, because IEBC has some values that we subscribe to as an institution, collectively, as an institution. We have teamwork as an institution. We have inclusivity, where we carry everyone along with us, irrespective of the things that would otherwise divide us. We have innovativeness. We have respect to the rule of law. And we have integrity. So yes, my personal values do complement the values of the institution that I work for.
In your own assessment, Madam Paloshe,
yes, sir.
What is, in terms of preparedness of the IEBC, what is your assessment in terms of preparedness of IEBC to address matters of corruption in elections?
Wow. Okay. Corruption is unfortunately a very individual. I don't think an institution would sit together and decide, let's be corrupt. But it starts with me being okay to, for instance, be compromised. If I allow myself to be compromised, then I spread it to my juniors. Then it spreads along, it almost becomes a culture. Now, this country has suffered corruption, and we seem to have okayed it to the extent that I can drive badly on the road and encounter a police officer and buy my way out. I can come and double park you. Those small things that we do as a citizen of this country are the small things that we carry back to our area of operation, and then we allow ourselves to be compromised. As IEBC is very prepared, and they have been addressing where issues have been pointed out. The institution actually has mechanisms and procedures of addressing. So if I'm pointed out, for instance, as an individual, that I was compromised to clear candidate A, the institution does take it very seriously, and disciplinary measures are taken. And most importantly, because I have signed a code of conduct as an electoral officer, I should be handed over to the law to take its course. But do
you have an example on that? Of what you've just said?
Yes.
If somebody has been, found culpable.
We do have members of staff, and allow me, Father Mutia, not to mention names, but we do have members of staff that have been charged with various corruption-related cases, and they have cases still ongoing in the courts of law, because remember, IEBC has to take this to the courts of law. So we do have, and these are individuals who have since ceased to work for the institution. Yes, we do have.
Mwisho naomba kuuliza tu swali kuhusu mafunzo ambayo mnawaelimisha wapiga kura. Kwa wakati mwingi tumeona manuals zenu ama vitabu vyenye mnatumia kuwafundisha vimeandikwa kwa Kiingereza. Mmejaribu Kiswahili?
Kuandika manuals kwa Kiswahili? Hatujaandika kwa Kiswahili, na hiyo ni kwa sababu ya ile colonization yenye tumeweka kwa akili zetu kama staff ama kama inchi. Mahali tunaandika kwa Kiswahili, wakati tunaenda kufanya hiyo elimu ya wapiga kura, wakati tunaenda kufanya hiyo elimu, utapata sasa tuko na posters ile imeandikwa kwa Kiswahili, na tuko na vipindi ile inafanywa kwa lugha ya wapiga kura wa hiyo. Kwa mfano kama hii eneo bunge ya Kiambaa, tumekuwa na wale wa kufundisha watu ambao wanaenda kufundisha kwa station zenye zinaongea lugha ya Kikuyu, so wanaongea lugha yenye watu wanaelewa. Lakini hatujaweka pesa sana kuinvest, hatujaweka pesa sana kuandika hiyo vitabu ya manuals, election manuals. Hatujaandika kwa Kiswahili, lakini wakati unapatiwa uende usomeshe, commission inatarajia kwamba utaenda kusomesha kwa lugha ile wale watu wanaelewa. Kwa mfano nikitumwa Kajiado, nitaenda niongee Kimasai. Nikitumwa Kiambaa, nitaenda niongee Kikuyu. Nikitumwa Machakos kwa mfano, nitaenda niongee Kikamba. Hata kama imevunjika kidogo, nitaongea tu na wataelewa. Lakini hatujaandika hiyo vitabu yetu kwa Kiswahili.
Thank you, Madam Peloshe, and all the best. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you so much, Reverend Father. Ms. Peloshe, allow me to ask you a general knowledge question.
Yes, Madam Chair.
And the question is, when was the current constitution promulgated? What was the date of promulgation?
27th of August, 2010.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Then with that, we have come to the end of your oral interview. I can invite you at this time to make any remarks you may have for the panel.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson and the Honorable Panel. I have absolutely enjoyed my interaction with you. Thank you for helping me relax. I was a bit tense when I walked in, but thank you. The way you throw the questions, direct the questions at us, does help us relax. I thank you most sincerely, Madam Chair, and the panel for that. But most particularly, allow me to thank you. And this, I speak on my behalf and that of the Secretariat of IEBC. In 2016, when the then Ahmed Isaac-led commission was disbanded and the positions were advertised, a number of us from the Secretariat applied. However, not even one of us was shortlisted. Your panel, on the other hand, did shortlist a number of us from the Secretariat. That we do sincerely appreciate. We do not take it for granted, because you considered our qualification and perhaps had to seal your ears to, the perception of the institution. You considered us in our own individual capacity. That, on my behalf and that of the Secretariat, We do not take it for granted, and we appreciate it most sincerely. My final call would be to, not just to the panel, but to this country. Like I said, election is too serious an activity to be left to the management of the EMB alone. It is therefore upon each one of us, as citizens of this country, to play our own specific role. And there is a role for all of us to play. If we all played our role, if we all involved ourselves just a little more in the governance of our nation, then we would have a more stable IEBC. It's not just enough to bash IEBC, and we welcome criticism, but I wish we had a situation where the little good we do, we get a pat on the back. Criticize us by all means, but by the same token, please appreciate when you get it right. And finally, last but not least, allow me to wish Dr. Abdallah and my brothers and sisters from the Muslim community a happy Eid tomorrow. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ms. Paloshe. And on behalf of the panel and the people of Kenya, we do appreciate the fact that you chose to be patriotic and applied to serve as a member of the commission. Staff, like any other Kenyan, have a right to apply for these jobs. So thank you so much for that. Now I will request a member of the Secretariat to walk you out. Please ensure you carry all your documents with you, and we wish you well.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, panel.
Thank you. Yes, we'll now end this session and resume tomorrow on Wednesday at 9:30.